Thank you for the introduction, Carl. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on the top 10 trends for 2021 for the dairy industry, focusing on Asia. As part of this session, we also have some polls within the session. So if you could please make sure to provide us with some input on how useful you found this session, that would be great. Now, before I start, I would just like to give a quick introduction to myself and to Innova Market Insights. As Carl already mentioned, my name is Akhil, and I work as a market analyst at Innova Market Insights. My focus is on dairy and on packaging. Now, Innova Market Insights is a company that has been in the industry for over 25 years. We are experts in food trends and providing market intelligence to companies in the FMCG industry. And I think that's it for now. We can dig deeper into the presentation. So let's just start. So today we will be focusing on, as part of this session for FHA Dairy, we will be focusing on the top 10 trends that we have identified for the food and beverage industry, see what the implications are for the dairy industry, and specifically highlight examples from Asia which highlight these trends. So here is a quick overview of the top 10 trends that we identified for the year 2021. Now, one thing that I would like to mention is that we don't believe that trends start in the beginning of the year and they become redundant towards the end of the year. At Innova Market Insights, we have been tracking trends for over 25 years, and we have noticed that quite often there are certain specific innovation platforms that continue to develop and start to encompass other aspects of different trends. So without further ado, let's dig deeper into the presentation. Now, the first trend that we identified was transparency triumphs. And we noticed that transparency is becoming more and more important as an aspect of communication with clients. And brands are really upping the transparency game to meet evolving consumer demands regarding transparency and traceability. Now, as I mentioned before, Innova Market Insights has been in the business of identifying trends for the past 25 years. And a little over a decade ago, in 2008, Innova already identified the importance of sustainability and transparency towards consumers through its Going Greener trend. According to a consumer survey that we conducted last year, we found that product information is of the most importance to consumers and is a major factor in influencing purchasing decisions. Consumers want to know what the product contains, and this sort of does come as a consequence of a few scandals that happened in the food industry in early 2010, which sort of brought in a little bit of distrust from the consumer standpoint. And as a result of that, since then, a lot of companies have been doing as much as they can to be as transparent as possible about their production processes, the products, how the products are being sourced. So trying to make sure that there's transparency from farm to fork. Now, there's many different ways in which this trend comes into practice. So one good example of a product is the one on the right. So this is the tapioca brown sugar milk. And as you can see, they really use storytelling and leverage storytelling to communicate to the customers regarding the taste of the product, that it's indulgent, and also highlighting the ingredient provenance. So this product contains brown sugar syrup from the Okinawa prefecture. Another example of how this trend evolves is also through packaging. So we also see a lot of innovation happening in packaging. So one example is that from Digimark that basically looks at invisible barcodes to communicate with customers, but also enable recycling sorting. And besides this, there's a lot of new technologies that are coming in as well, which is basically trying to make sure that it meets consumer demands. One of these for Asian consumers is the SIG Heat and Go microwavable packaging that is being offered through vending channels as well. Now, when it comes to meaningful storytelling, this has become a very integral part of clean label. Now, clean label has evolved a long time to encompass a lot of different elements. Now, on the graphic on the left, you can see that we've been tracking, we've been on top of the clean label trend and tracking the evolution of different aspects of this consumer-driven movement. Now, we've seen a shift. So, clean label initially was really focused on cleaning up the food labels and removing additives, having nothing artificial, moving towards more organic production. But we see now that it has come to encompass a lot more different elements and starts to have a little bit of overlap with the sustainability and transparency trends as well. Now, according to a consumer survey that we conducted, we found that little over 60% of all consumers are interested in learning more about where their food comes from and how it is made. Now, the example on the right is a really good example of a cheese from Bali. So this cheese is handmade in Bali, and they also communicate that it has been produced with local ingredients and it has been developed to suit the Indonesian and international taste. And furthermore, they do indicate that they're partnering with various family farms in East Java and Bali. So this really, adds a little bit of trust to the consumers in terms of fair trade and the ethics involved with the production of the food product. The next trend that we have is the plant forward trend. So now plant-based is a trend that has been continuously evolving over time. As you can see on the left, this is a trend that we have also been tracking the evolution of over the past few years. So in 2019, the trend was mainly focused on the plant kingdom. It was really focused on how there has been improvements in the technology and the technologies involved in producing these products and ensuring that they produce a similar taste and texture to the alternatives that they're trying to replace. In 2020, we found that this has become more of a revolution, and we see that the plant-based trend is permeating through a lot of different categories as well. And in 2021, we can say for certain that plant-based has really moved more towards the mainstream. It's driving expansion to more and more market categories beyond the traditional categories that we consider to be plant-based. So going beyond dairy alternatives and meat alternatives, we see the plant-based trend expanding into a lot more categories, and there's rising mainstream appeal for this trend. Now, a few examples on the right exemplify how far the plant-based trend has come, especially as it relates to dairy alternatives in this case. So in Asia, soy milk, for example, has been quite a staple. But we do see that companies are now moving towards other alternative protein sources and moving beyond just soy. And for products that contain the traditional sources, they're moving beyond the typical product offerings. So a very nice example is that from Vita Soy. So this is a soy milk that is made specifically for producing coffee for baristas. Now, as I mentioned to you, there has been a lot of expansion in the plant-based trend, and this is a global phenomenon, however, with certain regional differences. We find that within the plant-based trend, there is a lot of influence from the Western market, especially when it comes to technologies and processing techniques. And we find that this is not something that is mainly just linked with the bigger players. We see a lot of startups coming into this space. And this is not also just restricted to food retail. We see that there has been an expansion of this trend moving from food retail to also different types of food service products. Now, there's a lot of different examples here on this slide, but one example that I would really like to highlight is that of Beyond Tofu from Japan. So this product is from Sagamiya Food. So this is a Japanese company that's over 60 years old and is a leader in this industry. And they have basically developed a unique method of making fermented vegan cheese. And this product, Beyond Tofu, has an authentic cheesy flavor and also has similar melting characteristics and textural characteristics as that of regular cheese. Now, the next trend that we have is tailored to fit. Now, when we look at tailored to fit, I would say that this trend sort of started off more with the gluten-free trend. So that's where personalized nutrition really began, in my opinion, where we found that a lot of these, there was a need for manufacturers to cater to a certain percentage of population. And for these consumers, they realized that switching their diet can really make a difference with regards to how they feel um, in terms of their general health and well-being. Now, we find that with this trend, mainly we see that personalized nutrition is coming into the spotlight as consumers are looking for food that fit their unique lifestyles. Now, close to two-thirds of all consumers say that they have found more ways to tailor their life and the products that they buy to their individual style, beliefs, and needs. So moving beyond gluten-free, we see that a vegan trend is also an excellent example of how food products are being produced in order to cater to certain specific dietary needs or also ethical needs when it comes to the vegan trend. Now, a very good example of a personalized nutrition solution that fits the specific needs of the consumers is that of Nespina. So this is a product that was launched in China in summer last year, and it basically comprises a digitally connected Q-cup machine, and it comes with different base sachets. So you have the equipment, you have different superfood sachets that you combine with different product-based sachets. So the product-based sachets can either be dairy-based, plant-based, or it can be more in the form of a smoothie. Now with Nestino, consumers can customize the type of drinks that they want for themselves and choose from over 21 different superfood recipes that have been designed by nutritionists using different types of ingredients that have certain health benefits. Now, when we look at lifestyle-specific personalized nutrition services, we find that a lot of these services are gaining traction, Nestino being one of them, but we also see this across a lot of different categories. Now, as I mentioned before, we see that within the dairy segment, when we look at tailor to fit, the main trend that we notice in terms of the claims being used is plant-based claims and vegetarian claims. And when we ask consumers how they would like their nutritional experiences to be personalized, the top three answers that we got were based on their nutritional needs. So based on whether or not they have certain allergies, whether they have an aversion to eating certain products, based on their lifestyle, and then finally based on their body composition. Now, as I mentioned before, in the plant-based trend, we see that it has been spreading across a lot of different industries. And one prime example of one specific brand which has really taken this up is that of Nestle Milo. So at some point of time last year, Nestle Milo also launched a plant-based version in Australia. And we see that they are launching this and expanding the offering across a lot of different regions within Asia. A good example of this is Nestle Malaysia launching dairy-free versions of its popular chocolate malt beverage Milo in an RTD format. So moving on from tailor to fit, the next trend that we look at is new omni-channel eating. So you might have realized that I've not really spoken so much about COVID yet, but obviously a lot of the trends that we identified, all of them have had some COVID impact or the other. New omni-channel eating is one that has really been really gotten a push with the COVID pandemic. So with this trend, we see that there's a lot of overlap between food service and food retail. And consumers nowadays can eat what they want, when they want, and where they want. So as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, we found that a lot of consumers, a lot of manufacturers have been pushed into finding alternative channels to provide their customers with the products that they need. So a really nice example is that of that from the Indonesian food delivery market. That is primarily dominated by Grab Food and Gojek's GoFood. And this year we also found that Singapore's e-commerce giant Shopee has quietly made an entry into this segment by launching a food delivery platform as well. Besides this, we also see a lot more of innovation happening between food service and food retail. So a lot of offerings that were present only exclusively in food service are now moving into food retail. So a nice example of that is that of Shiroi Koibito. which is a cookie from the Hokkaido province in Japan. So this cookie contains chocolate sandwiched between biscuits and is one of the most famous Japanese chocolate cookies. And it's only sold in limited shops in Japan, in the Hokkaido province. And we saw that this particular treat has now expanded and moved to different distribution channels as well in the past year. So moving from local shops to being available nationwide via an e-commerce channel. And then finally, earlier this year, we saw that they converted that. So I'll be talking about this a little bit later in one of the other trends as well. So this is an example of a bit of a product mashup where they're taking inspiration from a different product and then bringing that inspiration in terms of the flavor into a different category. The next trend that we have is in tune with immune. So again, this is another trend that has really gotten a push as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So immunity has always been on top of consumers' minds. And over the past few years, we have seen that the focus on health and trying to trying to achieve health through their food. So using a preventative approach to health as opposed to using curative approach to health is what consumers are looking for more and more nowadays. And we see that this trend, as I mentioned, it has really gotten a push because consumers are more and more anxious about their immunity in the current environment that we're in. And we found that close to 60% of global consumers admit that they are increasingly looking for food and beverages that support their immune health. On the right, you have a few examples of different products. So all of these products were launched earlier this year. And we see that companies are trying to promote and communicate the effect on immunity that certain products may have for the consumers. Now, we see that as a consequence of, in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, we see there's a lot of increased interest in botanical ingredients. And we find that, for example, turmeric, ginger, all of these were already growing a lot, but we see a lot more of these being communicated and the health benefits of these with regards to immunity being communicated a little bit more explicitly. Now, according to a consumer survey we conducted early last year, we found that little over 50% of global consumers say that as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, they have spent more time educating themselves on ingredients and procedures that they can apply to their lives to help boost their immune health. Now, of the three top reasons, the top elements that consumers look for when they want to achieve immune health, the third most important reason is food. So the other two are more related to lifestyle, so getting enough sleep, being healthy physically. And the third one is really related to what you eat. So consumers believe that choosing foods that are naturally high in nutrients, such as vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, are vital elements in achieving immune health. Now, the next trend that we have is nutrition hacking. So this trend sort of evolves from one of the trends that we had last year, which was mainly linked, which was macronutrient makeover. And with this trend, mainly with the macronutrient makeover trend, we are basically looking at how consumers are moving more towards creating balanced solutions as opposed to creating certain solutions where there's too much of a particular macronutrient. So, for example, having high protein drinks, you have much less fat and sugars. So, and compared to that, if you have something that's low fat, the fat is being substituted by carbohydrates. So, in order to the macronutrient trend basically looks at moving away from that mindset of having something just high in something or low in something and trying to achieve a balance. So now the nutrition hacking trend basically takes that a step further and also leverages technology in order to achieve this. Close to 80% of consumers globally believe that progress in food and beverage can be made through science. And a nice example of this product coming into practice is that from Paperboard. So Paperboard is a company from India that has been in the market for over 10 years. They originally started in the beverages segment, so mainly producing juices and soft drinks. And now you can see that they've also moved into the dairy segment by launching a buttermilk drink. And with this product, they also communicate what the advantages are. So it's enriched with vitamin D and vitamin B12. It doesn't contain any additives and preservatives, so it fits right into the clean label trend. And furthermore, it contains 50% of your daily requirements of the aforementioned vitamins. Now, when it comes to technology, we find that a lot of consumers are a little bit on the fence. So only a certain percentage of consumers strongly agree or strongly disagree uh, with the statement that they're prepared to compromise on the naturalness of the product to fit their dietary needs, while a major chunk of the consumers are on the fence. And we see that for manufacturers, they are trying to leverage this to cater to the different needs. So for consumers that are not prepared to compromise on nationalness, you have products that are more clean label driven and not leveraging technology too much. While, for example, for consumers that strongly agree that they're willing to compromise on naturalness, that might be the sort of consumer base that is more amenable to newer technologies that are coming in, such as cultured meat and cell-based dairy, etc. Now, the next trend that we have is basically mood, the next occasion. And with this trend, we see that basically, when it comes to mood, there are many different specific mood platforms that we see that are coming to the forefront. And with these platforms, we see an increase in the use of adaptogens that provide certain specific health benefits. Now, according to a consumer survey we conducted, we found that the three most important actions that consumers take to improve their overall health and well-being is physical fitness, taking some time for spiritual engagements, and besides that, also taking into account the fact that mental and emotional well-being is quite important to their overall health. Now, a really good example of products that are targeting the mood health platform, one of the examples is that from Raw Preston. So this is a product that contains chocolate. So we do see that when it comes to mood, there is also a bit of a link with indulgence as well. So chocolate being rich in endorphins and in certain ingredients that help promote your mood is being increasingly used in products that are catered towards improving your mood. And this is a platform that has also come more to the forefront over the past year as mental health becomes more and more of a like according to WHO, they believe that depression is going to be one of the leading illnesses. And also as a consequence of the pandemic and people being socially isolated, mental health and the need for products that cater to your mood is really been pushed to the forefront now. And when it comes to the different types of mood related platforms that we see in Asia, we find that energy related claims and claims regarding replenishing yourself or recharging yourself are really coming up to the forefront. And besides the mood platforms, we also see that there is a strong focus on beauty in Asia. So a lot of use of collagen and hyaluronic acid in products. The next trend that we have is product mashups when trends collide. So this trend basically looks at the sustained popularity for hybrid innovation. And within the food industry, there's broadening dimensions of indulgence. So this links with a couple of trends that we had last year. So one of the trends is discovery, the adventurous consumer. So we see a lot more consumers nowadays are interested in trying newer experiences, newer flavors. And the other trend that this takes into account is the Hello Hybrids trend that we had last year. So we see across a lot of different categories, we see a lot of fusion of different product bases. So in Asia particularly, we see a lot of companies experimenting with the combination of tea and juice. And furthermore, this is not a trend that is just restricted to food retail. We also see examples of hybrid food innovation across the food service sector. One very nice example is that from Yili. So this is a product that basically combines Yili's cheese boba yogurt together with Kylin Tea's traditional hot and dry noodles. The next trend that we have is modern nostalgia. So now with this trend, it's basically looking at how companies are taking global trends, and in order to make sure that they're successful in the local market, they're providing these products with a local makeover, and regional stalwarts are now being brought into modern relevance as a consequence of this trend. Now, a very good example of this comes from Japan. So, Nestle's Kit Kat has been quite famous for, making doing a lot of flavor innovation and trying to incorporate local Japanese tradition into their products. So you see a lot of flavors in Kit Kat as well. So, for example, green matcha Kit Kat, which was uh, quite commonplace in Japan, was introduced in the European market a couple of years ago. And also, we also have an example of sake brewery, which is basically collaborated with Kit Kat to provide a Kit Kat flavored sake. And besides this, we also see that familiar brands are using cross-category innovation in order to cater to this consumer need for more discovery and more adventure through consumption of hybrid products. Finally, we come to our last trend, which is age of the influencer. And this is something that is particularly quite strong in Asia. And we find that a lot of consumer behavior can be driven by a few influencers on social media platforms. And according to a consumer survey that we conducted, we found that 2 in 5 global consumers say that they don't believe bloggers and influencers are honest about the products that they promote. But even so, we find that a strong percentage of the population still gets influenced by these people, because ultimately it's all about celebrity endorsements as well. And when they believe that someone whom they aspire to or look at as a role model is consuming certain products, they are much more likely to, take that into account and incorporate that into their life as well. So that is it for my presentation. We are going to be having a live Q&A session. So to answer any of the questions that you have now, please feel free to send in your questions, and yeah, we can address that then. And that's all from my end. And thank you for your patience, and thank you for listening.